Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Probably about 8 minutes before 8 is the time after that extended interview with Sir Malcolm Grant. We'll come to your calls concerning the situation in Afghanistan. Grace, you'll be at the top of the list. But let's get the latest on that situation. A few better people to turn to than Conservative MP and Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, who joins me now. OK, thank you for coming on, Secretary of State. The first question, what do you understand to be the situation as regards British nationals and, of course, those that we are seeking to get out of Afghanistan from Kabul airport? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nick. So first of all, the footage you've seen on the television about lots of people trying to get on planes, that is on the south side of the airport. That is the civilian side, which sadly civilian flights are suspended, and that has led obviously to the panic and the personnel trying to get on. At the military side of the airport, we have secured our locations. That's why we've flew in 600 members of 16th Air Assault Brigade. Military flights, both US, UK and other nations are coming in and out. We used them yesterday to take out nearly 200 plus British passport holders, including officials, but also contractors and other British passport holders who just what we have an obligation to. And indeed, we'll continue to use those flights to get out a further 700 Afghans and their families and another further 700 on top of that over the next few days. So that part of the airport is functioning. The UK forces are securing or have secured a location that allows us to process all the eligible people to come through and then to be marshalled onto those flights. And we will then rotate them through from Afghanistan to a Middle East country so we can have a quick turnaround and continue to do it. And the Home Secretary and I were speaking even into late last night, where she's flying in some border force people to speed up that processing, because it's really, really important that MOD and the Home Office process as many of these people we have an obligation to get them out as quick as possible.
Secretary of State, when do you imagine the time will be that will be the last man or woman standing? When do you hope to have full evacuation?
Our timescales plan on August the 31st for the evacuation of all the people that we would have said was in the hopper, those people that are passing or have passed security checks, those people that are effectively have a ticket to ride, and indeed get out the three cohorts that I think I told you about last week, which were entitled personnel, British passport holders, British officials, and indeed then obviously all those Afghans. And I think, to be clear to your listeners, we are only now in Afghanistan and have been for the last 2 weeks to process those people. We're not in it for, we're not doing other diplomatic functions. We are simply there to process all those British passport holders and all those people we have an obligation to. And, our men and women of our armed forces are risking their lives in doing that, but that is the right thing to do. They've risked their lives the last 20 years. At the very least, our obligation has to be as many of these people through the pipeline as possible. But I think I also said, and it's a really deep part of regret for me, that some people won't get back. Some people won't get back. And we will have to do our best in third countries to process those people.
Why do you feel it so personally, Mr. Wallace?
Because I'm sold. Because it's sad, and the West has done what it's done. And we have to do our very best, Nick, to get people out and stand by our obligations. And 20 years of sacrifice is what it is.
What does this track back to? You've described the Trump deal as a rotten deal. A lot of blame is being directed at Joe Biden. Is that fair in your view, Secretary of State?
Look, I think when the Trump deal was done, the dividend was taken very quickly. The dividend was taken so quickly that we didn't have time to proper formulate the withdrawal plan. And I think that's why I felt it was a rotten deal. I remember literally being in Washington where I was given assurances about certain numbers, and literally a few days later, the White House at the time had drawn that down further. So I think, Nick, it has been a deal that hasn't delivered what we'd hoped it to deliver. Of course, there was always a need for a deal, but how that deal was processed was really important.
Is Afghanistan a failed state now, Mr. Wallace?
Well, I think we'll have to see what the Afghan government does. I think the Afghan government has said lots of things recently. The new Taliban are saying that they have a different attitude to it. We have to match their actions with rhetoric.
OK. What are your fears for Afghanistan, for Kabul now?
Well, my fears for Afghanistan would be the same as any state if it descends into civil war. What we see in states that fail is rampant poverty and indeed rampant insecurity problems. And, Security Minister, I was on your show many times, dealing with the consequences of what I would say is flow of, rampant immigration flow, rampant security problems. And I think all of those things are really, really a challenge for us all. But I think that's why my defence reform I did in March is about reconfiguring the state, our defences, to make sure that we never again find ourselves dependent on one or the other.
The Prime Minister says the West needs to work together to ensure Afghanistan does not become, quotes, a breeding ground for terror. While he's obviously right about that, how is that to be done in practical purposes?
Well, going back to my defence reform in March, we did invest quite strongly in the ability to buy new equipment, train and change our forces so we can deliver, if we have to, a military capability from outside a country into one to deal with threats as they emerge. You can deal with terrorism from the air. We see, and I have to announce to Parliament regularly the use of our drones to take out ISIS in places like northern Syria and Iraq. Those capabilities will remain and are important, and we've invested in those. The use of cyber to disrupt plots, the use of work against organised crime to prevent smuggling routes to make our society insecure. All of those are really important. They're all methods we can deal to contain terrorism, but also the international community needs to stick together and say hosting people like Al-Qaeda is not acceptable.
Notwithstanding the incredible work that I'm sure you've done over the weekend and your colleague Priti Patel, where's the Foreign Secretary?
Well, I've spoken to the Foreign Secretary every day. I've spoken to the Prime Minister nearly every day. I haven't had over the last few weeks any problems working with the Foreign Office. They've done an amazing job alongside Home Office and Defence, and we've managed to deliver that.
Shouldn't he be here, Mr. Wallace?
I don't know the Foreign Secretary's intimate diary. What I know is that I saw him last night. I think he is here. I saw him on a Cobra call last night, and as far as I'm aware, he is. Well, I'm not going to speculate where he is, but he is the Foreign Secretary. So his ability to work wherever he is in the world is absolutely key to our function. It's the same as me. I was recently in the Pacific, and I could carry on my duties all the time.
Last couple of points. Has the world suddenly got a more dangerous place?
I think I've said in my opening forward of the defence review, the world is a more anxious place, more unstable, and I think that is true. And I think another site of a superpower effectively having to leave, that doesn't do the world any good at all. And an unstable Afghanistan is also strategic. It's not just a local problem. Afghanistan is partly what it is over the last 1,000 years because of its location, its strategic location, and a failing or a threatening, weakened Afghanistan is not going to be good for global security. And
lastly, you and I have been speaking for years, and I think earlier you were almost choking up, Mr. Wallace. Is that partly because, to remind my listeners, you served yourself, you've been a captain in the Scots Guards? Is that why you feel it's so personal, sir? No, I just think we all care. We all care. We're all trying to do our very best. It's quite a high-pressured environment, and I think we just have to make sure we do our best. And, I don't like waking up in the morning and seeing the footage I see on the telly. I hate, I know we all have our own conflicts as soldiers. Mine was Northern Ireland. It wasn't like in Afghanistan. We all have our memories, and you cannot help but understand the real sense of sadness and anxiousness from our veterans. And we have to stand by that. Thanks for your time, Ben Wallace, appearing here on LBC. I'm grateful to you. It's 8 o'clock. News is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has acknowledged that the Taliban is now